Lesson 28, Holy Communion. Holy Communion is the receiving of Jesus Christ in the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist. Communion is an action. It is a sharing to the full in the Eucharistic sacrifice by eating the flesh of Christ as the food of our soul. By our sacrifice, we have offered a gift to God. God is pleased and has accepted our gift. He is so pleased that he invites us to eat of the gift we have given him. He invites us to eat as guests at his table. Communion is the action by which all of us eat together the flesh and blood of Christ as the food and drink of our soul. To receive Holy Communion worthily, it is necessary to be free from mortal sin, to have a right intention when we receive Holy Eucharist. Anyone who knowingly receives Holy Communion in mortal sin receives the body and blood of Christ, but they do not receive his graces, and they commit a grave sin of sacrilege. Only the living can eat bodily food. So too, only those living the life of grace can be nourished by the food of the Eucharist. If someone is in mortal sin goes to communion, he receives no more nourishment than a dead person would if food were forced down his throat. It would even be worse, since it's called a sacrilege. To receive more abundantly the graces of Holy Communion, we should strive to be most fervent and to free ourselves from deliberate venial sins. To receive more abundantly the graces of Holy Communion, we should strive to be most fervent and to free ourselves from deliberate venial sin. For example, if our hands are dirty at mealtime, we wash them before coming to the table. So too, if our souls are soiled with venial sin before communion, we should wash them with an act of contrition. To get our souls really clean, we should often take a good bath in the precious blood of Christ in the sacrament of penance. The more often we do this, the cleaner our souls will be to approach the table of the Eucharist. We should never stay away from communion, though, because we have venial sins on our soul. Even though we may not be as clean as we should be, our souls need food. The Church does not command us to fast from midnight before communion as it did formerly. The laws enacted by Pope Pius XII regarding the fast required before Holy Communion are the following. Number 1, water may be taken at any time before Holy Communion without breaking the fast. Number 2, sick persons, though not confined to bed, may receive Holy Communion after taking medicine with water. A priest's permission is not necessary. Number 3, all Catholics may receive Holy Communion after fasting 1 hour from food and drink. This rule applies to Holy Communion at midnight Mass as well as at Masses celebrated throughout the day. Number 4, you may not receive Holy Communion a second time on the same day, unless the danger of death arises. But one who has received the Holy Eucharist at midnight Mass of Christmas or at the Mass of Easter Vigil may receive again in the course of the day. We should prepare ourselves for Holy Communion by thinking of our divine Redeemer, who we are about to receive, and by making acts of faith, hope, love, and contrition. After Holy Communion, we should spend time adoring our Lord, thanking him, renewing our promises of love and of obedience to him, and asking him for blessings for ourselves and for others. The chief effects of a worthy Holy Communion are, first, a closer union with our Lord and a more fervent love of God and of our neighbor. Second, an increase of sanctifying grace. Third, preserved from mortal sin and the remission of venial sin. And fourth, the lessening of our inclinations to sin and to help practice good works. Holy Communion is eating food for the soul. Our Lord said, "He who eats me he also shall live because of me. The chief effects of a worthy Holy Communion are first, a closer union with our Lord and a more fervent love of God and of our neighbor. Second, an increase of sanctifying grace. Third, to help preserve us from mortal sin and the remission of venial sin. And fourth, to lessen our inclinations to sin and to help us to practice good works. Holy Communion is eating food for the soul. Our Lord Jesus said in the Gospel of St. John, "He who eats me, he also shall live because of me." But Christ is love. This food is a flaming food, flaming with the fire of divine love. Those who cannot go to daily communion, but would if they could, can make a spiritual communion. This means a real desire to go to communion when it is impossible to receive sacramentally. This desire obtains for us from our Lord the graces of communion in proportion to the strength of the desire.